If there were one state that could be called a true microcosm of America, a state with a good balance of factories and farms, a diverse population, a broad economic base, and a central location, this would be the place. Greetings from Illinois, America's 21st state, which joined the Union on December 3, 1818. Its population of nearly 13 million people ranks it 5th in the nation.
I think what I miss most about Illinois is the way it looks. I think I really miss the way Chicago has such a sense of history to it because of its architecture. I miss the fabulous museums that they have there, the whole lakefront. I miss driving up Lakeshore Drive. I miss Lincoln Park Zoo. So I miss all the things that I knew as a kid that are still there, and I'm just so glad that they are still there for someone else to enjoy them.
If you ask a Chicagoan where they're from, they say they're from Chicago, period. They would never put comma, Illinois. There is a sense that Chicago is in of itself, in the same way in which New York and New Yorkers feel about their city.
But the second city is second to none when it comes to landmarks. In downtown Chicago, one of the world's largest public libraries is the 756,000 square foot Harold Washington Library Center. Opened in 1991, its 9 floors hold over 10.7 million volumes. A few blocks away, you'll find the tallest building in North America, the 3rd tallest in the world. The Sears Tower contains enough steel to build 69,000 automobiles and enough telephone wiring to wrap around the world 1.75 times. Not to be outdone, the Field Museum houses the largest and most complete T-Rex fossil yet discovered. The dino, affectionately named Sue, was unearthed in South Dakota and acquired by the museum in 1997. Even with all these astonishing attributes, the state's greatest claim to fame is one of America's most revered icons, a man who was actually born in Kentucky.
We readily acknowledge Lincoln was born in Kentucky, and we also acknowledge the time he spent in Indiana, but he chose Illinois to be his home state.
If Illinois is the land of Lincoln, then Springfield is clearly its epicenter. This was his home for 25 years, where he first worked as a lawyer, married, and raised his family. Today, Springfield is home to the first and only Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum, which opened in 2005. The state-of-the-art facility is filled with high-tech exhibits to attract visitors in the 21st century. Audiences are enthralled by a theatrical presentation that incorporates live actors and special effects to bring Abraham Lincoln to life.
And that government of the people, by the people, for the people.
There is so much here for those interested in the 16th president, including one little-known piece of Lincoln lore.
Abraham Lincoln became involved in an affair of honor with another prominent politician in the state, James Shields.
The two men were from opposite political parties and at odds over some state business. When an anonymous letter appeared in the Sangamo Journal of Springfield attacking Shields' character and his Irish ethnicity, Shields suspected Lincoln's soon-to-be wife, Mary Todd, or Lincoln himself. Shields confronted Lincoln, expecting an apology.
And when Lincoln wasn't forthcoming with the retraction, he issued a challenge to a duel. Illinois didn't allow dueling, and it required them to go to an island on the Missouri side of the Mississippi. Lincoln, however, got to choose weapons.
Lincoln's choice was unorthodox, cavalry broadswords of the largest size. He figured that with swords, he could easily disarm Shields. Pistols, on the other hand, would likely end in at least one death.
Lincoln was 6'4". Shields was 5'9", a tall man by his day, but not to Lincoln's gigantic standards. And to go ahead and try to approach Lincoln with a sword with that kind of reach advantage was something that was daunting for Shields. Some say that Lincoln essentially wanted to make the duel as foolish and comic as possible so as to mock Shields and to prevent the thing from reaching a violent outcome.
In the face of this obvious mismatch, Shields was persuaded to accept the promise of a written apology from Lincoln. After this unfortunate incident, the men became personal and professional friends for the rest of their careers, demonstrating Lincoln's uncanny ability to turn former opponents into political allies. Geographically, Illinois stretches the bounds of north and south. Chicago famously suffers the harsh winters of Lake Michigan, while the southernmost town is actually farther south than Richmond, Virginia. But central Illinois is where you'll find one secret of the state's success: its soil.
In this part of the country, corn and soybeans are the two main crops that are grown here. Farmland in central Illinois is $5,000 an acre, so pretty good land.
Illinois also once had the largest, most sophisticated Native American civilization north of Mexico. According to archaeological finds, the city of Cahokia was inhabited from about 800 AD to 1400 AD. It covered nearly 6 square miles, with a population as high as 20,000 people. This was a center of religion and learning, and its people built huge pyramids, designed solar observatories, even practiced human sacrifice. The exact fate of the prehistoric Cahokians and their city remains unknown.
Cahokia declined as an urban center between 1300 AD and 1400 AD. By 1400, the site was basically abandoned. Why did this happen? It's a mystery.
We think some of the factors involved are depletion of resources, cutting down all the trees to build these walls, for building all the thousands of houses and the firewood they need every day for cooking and heating for thousands of people. And not just Cahokia, but all these other hundreds of surrounding communities too, which are competing for these resources.
Today, along the Mississippi riverbanks, archaeologists continue to dig for clues, hoping to solve the ancient mystery of Illinois' great pyramid builders. In the 1920s, however, there was no mystery about who was the most powerful and intimidating force in Illinois. It was a mobster named Al Capone.
Chicagoans enjoy the reputation of Al Capone as a savvy, streetwise, big-shouldered kind of guy. The city of Chicago, however, is a bit ashamed that its most famous citizen would be someone associated with brothels, prohibition violations, gambling, and criminal racketeering.
Alphonse Capone grew up in New York City amidst gang warfare. After killing a man in Brooklyn, Al was sent by the mob to cool off in Chicago. There, his New York mentor, Johnny Torrio, soon called upon the 22-year-old Capone to run his new club, the Four Deuces, a speakeasy, gambling joint, and whorehouse all in one. Around that time, a new constitutional amendment drastically changed America. Prohibition made alcohol illegal and made men like Al Capone rich and powerful.
Capone was sort of a melting pot mobster. He was not a member of the Italian mafia or anything like that. He was a second-generation American, and he worked with Irish Americans, he worked with Orthodox Jews, he worked with Greek Americans, Polish Americans. In the jazz clubs he ran, he had black musicians. He was not a person of prejudices. He was somebody who saw bringing people together through organized crime was a way to make the most money.
In 1929, Capone was at the height of his power and influence. But on Valentine's Day of that year, he made what would turn out to be his fatal mistake. He ordered the death of his rival, Bugs Moran. Capone's hitmen dressed up as police, lined up 7 gangsters in a garage in downtown Chicago, and mowed them down. They didn't know it at the time, but Moran was not even there.
It was because of the St. Valentine's Day massacre that President Herbert Hoover decided to go ahead and really focus federal resources on putting Al Capone behind bars.
It took 2 years, but what finally got Capone in the end was not a charge of murder, extortion, or liquor running. It was tax evasion. When Al Capone entered prison in 1931, Prohibition was nearing its end. With it, an infamous chapter in the state's history was all but over. Since those dark days, Illinois has taken its place among the most robust states in the nation, with expanded economic opportunities, a rebuilt infrastructure, and a strong, diverse economy.
I'm proud to have come from Illinois because I think it has a more open attitude as a state. And I think it's because they have the down-home feeling of the farm country, and then they have that sophistication of Chicago all wrapped up in one state.